Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are finally here with Coach Randy Bessolo of University High School in San Francisco. Coach, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I've been looking forward to this.
All right, let's dive in. Take us through your background. How did you end up coaching? What was the journey like in landing your first job and subsequent jobs? And take us through up until present day.
Well, I always like to think, even though I'm about to turn 60, I always like to think of myself as a player. And the saying is, when you can't play, you coach. And if you can't coach, you got to ref. And I don't want to ref. God bless those guys. So I'm focused on doing a very good job coaching here. But my coaching journey actually first started when I was at Columbia University. I went there, played basketball. And my junior year, I tore my ACL. So at that point, I couldn't play anymore. And Wayne, who was the head coach at the time, was nice enough to let me be a volunteer assistant. But after graduating from Columbia, I thought I needed to earn some money. So I went and followed a professional career in finance. A lot of my attraction to coaching is working with kids. And when I was in New York, I was in the Catholic Big Brother program. When I moved to Chicago, I was Cabrini Green tutoring program, volunteered at the basketball program at the Mercy Boys Foundation. So I had an interest in working with kids. And as I got older, and when I was in Chicago, I was playing a lot of men's leagues, both basketball and baseball. But as I turned 35, I started getting older and I said, hey, I really want to get into coaching. And what a great way to combine my interest in working with kids and basketball. And one of my former teammates from Columbia, his brother was an assistant coach at DePaul, and his uncle was the head coach at DePaul, Pat Kennedy. So I started talking to them about how could I get involved in coaching. And I was still working full time. And they said, hey, there's an AAU coach, Larry Butler, who sent us a lot of kids, including Quentin Richardson and so high level AAU. And so they introduced me to Larry, and Larry said, hey, I need somebody to coach my 14 and under team. So I spent 5 years in Chicago coaching AAU, starting with 14 and unders. I ultimately moved up to 15s and 16s. But that really, I was all in at that point. I just loved working with the kids. In Chicago, we were dealing with inner city kids. So it was part basketball, was part social work. We dealt with everything from guys bringing a gun to the game to guys getting arrested and we had kids. A lot of them went on to play in college. I actually had two who played in the NBA and one who played in the NFL. And we had other guys who got in trouble and went to jail. But it was, I just, at that point, I was convinced this is hugely worthwhile and it's what I want to do. I'm a California native. I grew up in the Bay Area and I had spent time in New York and Chicago. And as I turned 40, I said, hey, it's time to come home. And it's time to me to switch my focus from working full-time and coaching part-time to coach full-time and work part-time. So as I turned 40, I moved back home. I'm in the real estate business. So I was able to control my own schedule, and I started up a real estate business in San Francisco. And I was able to focus on coaching full-time. I wanted to do it at an inner city school, and I applied for 3 jobs, 2 in the Oakland Athletic League and University High School. And University High School was the one that offered me the job. And so here I'm going into my 20th year. I'm very grateful that Jim Ketchum was the athletic director at the time. Very grateful to Jim and the school for giving me the opportunity to coach. And it's been a lot of fun.
Love that. So we're going way off script right now because of the nature of your intro stories. Urban area for pretty much your whole life, right? If we're going from New York to Chicago and now in the city in San Francisco. And you mentioned that you started while you were in New York, but then in Chicago, you started helping out. You're working with Cabrini Green after school program or whatever that was like. So this is like way out of left field, but I'd love to know your thoughts. And I know it happened after you left, I think, but the impact of programs like the Housing Authority in that area, and now that they've taken that away, what you saw as impact before and maybe afterwards in regards to urban areas like where you're at now.
Yeah, the urban area situation is complicated, but a lot of the kids I coached, their family situations varied. And a lot of the kids didn't have a father involved in their life, and you can never replace a father, but the coach is the next best thing. And we really did a lot with these kids. They'd never been out of town. I lived on the north side near Wrigley Field, and most of the kids I coached were south side kids. We had some west side kids, and it wasn't uncommon for a kid to say, "Hey, Coach Randy, where do you live?" And I say, "Oh, I stay up on the north side." And they'd say, "Where's that? Is that above 35th Street?" So their perspective was the north side was the north part of the south side. They really hadn't been anywhere, hadn't seen anything. And I think it's so important for kids to feel a part of something. I go down to the south side, and I can't tell you how many older people or older teenagers or 20-year-olds would come up to me and say, "Hey, coach, do you have a team I can be on?" And kids want to belong. And it's no surprise that the gangs and all that have a lot of success attracting kids, because kids want to belong. They want to be appreciated. They want to be loved. And being on a team is such a wonderful mechanism to help kids. And it's a big part of why I coach. And the thing is, you can't help all the kids, but we want to help the ones we can touch. And again, as I told you, some went on and made it and some didn't, but we tried equally as hard with all of them. And hopefully we gave them a good experience. And again, coaching it's not about winning games. It's about helping kids. And my favorite expression is, once their coach, always their coach. And you have this opportunity to reach kids, which is pretty special. And your paths will divert and you may not see them again, but hopefully those lessons that you taught are still with them. Hopefully they can reflect on some of those lessons, and some of them call you and say, "Hey, I've got this situation. Can you help me?" And you can still help them as a coach. But it's really a special opportunity to teach life skills and values. And that's ultimately what we should all be about as coaches. And again, the problems in the inner city are bigger, far bigger than what we were doing. But I was just trying to do the best I could with the kids that I had the opportunity to coach.
Yeah, and obviously it had an impact as you applied for 2 jobs in the OAL and ultimately ended up at university. How would you say your experience and background in the environment you were in Chicago and in New York and your target audience in the Bay Area has informed your journey at university, which is definitely not the OAL, right? And those of you that aren't familiar, you're listening from afar, University High School is similar to my school. It's private, it's independent, they're a day school. And ultimately, the setup is very different than an Oakland Athletic League school or even a San Francisco City school. But how would you say those experiences informed the work that you do with your athletes now at university and other ways in which that shows up?
Yeah, again, it's an interesting discussion. And by the way, I do club basketball stuff too. So in San Francisco, I continue to work with inner city kids. And actually, San Francisco is a lot tougher city than people realize. And sadly, I've had players out here go to jail or even a couple murdered. So it's no joke in San Francisco either. But clearly at University High School, we're dealing with a very academically focused, affluent student body. And I think coaching in Chicago gave me a lot of perspective. But really, when it comes down to it, success is built on the same foundation. It's built on the same values. And it's about hard work, it's about commitment, it's about doing the right thing, teamwork. The basketball is not different, the values are not different, but we have kids who are coming from strong families, and with their priorities, they've got multiple ways, multiple paths they can follow. And basketball is a little more about fun, where the guys in Chicago, for a lot of them, it was their only chance. It was their only path. But I think both groups are passionate about basketball. Both groups are trying to be the best they can be. Both groups are young men who are impressionable, who we can help. We can help guide with the right values and the right lessons. And so as much that may seem different, there's a lot that's the same too.
No, 1,000%. I think the reason I'm asking, Coach, is when I go to, let's say, the AD conference in the state, and we'll have breakout sessions, and some of my colleagues that are at a public school, or when I was at the all boys Catholic, or when I was at the public school, there's an inherent feeling that what we deal with doesn't transfer. And it's no, it 100% does. And so I'm curious what you've been able to see transfer in both ways while you have your foot in both worlds, right? So you're a private, or excuse me, you're a high school coach. You're also a club coach. How do you see the, I won't call it skills, that's not the right word, but the tools? How do they transfer? What are the things that are consistent throughout, regardless, that you lean on? And then what are the things that are unique to each of those circumstances that you have to be thoughtful about when you're wearing that particular hat?
Yet again, I go back to, and it may not be the answer that you might expect, but I think the values that lead to success are the same in both worlds. I think it's with one world, you're starting with kids who may be further along and understanding that. But at the end of the day, the beauty of sports is ultimately you control how hard you work, you control what your attitude is, you control how good a teammate you are. And clearly, some folks are dealt a much harder hand. But regardless of the hand you're dealt, you got to focus on doing the best you can in the circumstances you're in. And that means no excuses. That means hard work. That means buying into team. So I think the starting points may be different, but I think the values and the ultimate goals are similar. And I think you can, I think I can have impact in both worlds. I think positive impact in both worlds.
For sure. When you got to university outside of the club space, that's your first head job, as I understand it. What did you realize right away that you needed to figure out shifting into this role? Right now, you've been there for 20 years. It's probably tough to remember in the infancy, but I'm always curious as people step into different roles, especially leading a program, what are the things that we as grizzled vets can offer? Hey, these are the things that, like, ultimately, if you don't figure this out, it's going to be a debacle.
Yeah, I grew a lot. I had the benefit. I had coached 5 years club basketball, and I was coaching about 100 games a year. And I did that all as a head coach. So I had a lot of experience coaching games. And also in the AAU world, you get to pick your players. When you coach at a high school, the players are there, right? So very different situation. And university has it's a great academic school, has a great athletic history, great program. But when I came in the prior season, they had only won 8 games. And number one, I had to build culture. And number one, I knew from Chicago, and Chicago, it's about toughness. Win or lose, you want to be the toughest team. And the first thing I did with my returning players was I said, hey, what happened last year? And they started saying, oh, the schedule was hard. So-and-so got hurt, and something about the coach and all this stuff. And I interrupted and I said, BS. I said, BS. We are no excuses. From here on out, we're going to focus on what we control, and we're going to work hard. Coming in, the number one thing is you got to start building culture. And I know that's a buzzword and everybody talks about culture. We want to be in the gym. We want to be in the gym. I'm a big believer in open gyms. The Brazilians are good at soccer because they're always playing soccer. All right. In an open gym, everybody handles the ball, everybody passes the ball, everybody shoots the ball. Sometimes you're challenged by somebody older, playing somebody you're building confidence, somebody younger. So I started holding open gyms, and the first couple open gyms, the attendance wasn't very good. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to be here every friggin' time. And if one guy shows up, we're going to focus on that one guy. But over time, the culture built. And from the work, we started with building hard work. Let's be in the gym. And the first year we won 18 games. We went from 8 wins to 18 wins. And each year it's gotten easier. And I think that's what I would tell a first coach is, hey, this is going to get easier. Your culture is going to develop. You're going to get better as a coach. I look back my first year as a coach, in retrospect, there's a lot of things I could have done different. But you don't understand until you experience. And a lot of development for a player, a lot of development for a coach is getting the experience. And you really got to dive in. And I'm a big believer in the school of hard knocks. And yeah, we lost some games. Yes, maybe we underachieved. I don't know, but we were trying our best. And we kept learning and continual improvement. And that's been the last 19 years, focusing on continual improvement.
Yeah, and that's the genesis of that question, right? It's, hey, you can have whatever background you want. You could have tutored under Mike Krzyzewski for 20 years, but when you slide over 18 inches, it's a completely different thing. And you got to your point, have those hard knocks and figure things out. And for all intents and purposes, fail forward, like often, right? Do you have a couple of anecdotes and stories you can share about failures that have allowed you to be successful long term?
Yeah, and again, you talked about this, but I'm a big believer in. I think it was after the Super Bowl, the Eagles quarterback, and I'm drawing a blank, but he said there's two outcomes. There's winning and there's learning. So we've never been scared of failure. We always have scheduled tough, and on those tough losses, when you learn, it's an opportunity to get better. I think one of the first shockers in my first year, we won 18 games, lost in the first round of NCS. In the second round, I think we won 21, and we went up to Cloverdale, which is a very tough place to play. And we lost by, we like to play fast, and we were going to get after them, and they were a very good team. And I think we lost by 30 points. But again, the guys who were coming back, we took that to heart. We went up the next year, again, played them in the second or third round at Cloverdale, same team that they had all the returning players, and we beat them. And again, I just think that was an early lesson where, we failed at a challenge and then used it as motivation and as a high bar. They set a higher bar for us, and when we came back and got better. And I frankly relished those opportunities. 2 years ago, we were in the NorCal D1 and we lost to Salesian. And I respect the heck out of what they did. They did to us what we try to do to other people. And for all last season, we kept referring to Salesian does this, Salesian did that, Salesian was disciplined, Salesian is this. Frankly, we embrace tough competition. We embrace the opportunity to learn when we lose. And I think a coach who's scared of losing is doing a disservice to his team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting the way in which, as a small school who doesn't necessarily have the same track record or mission and vision institutionally, to be able to compete with the Salesians of the world says a lot about where you've been able to grow this thing. What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on the culture you spoke of, right? Toughness, whatever it happens to be, as a tool that you can offer others outside of having the gym open all the time, right? What would you say, were you to leave tomorrow and go somewhere else, that you would take with you and implement in a way in which it would hopefully have a similar ripple effect?
Yeah, one thing I always say this, and a lot of people think we've had a lot of success, and some people think this philosophy doesn't tie in with success. But I think back, and again, I told you, I always think as a player, one of my best experiences in my life was playing high school basketball. My best friends today are my high school basketball teammates. And I really believe this. And the first thing I tell my team every year is our first goal is to have fun. And our second goal is to make lifelong friends. And I say, if we achieve those two goals, we're going to win a lot of games. And I really believe that. If it's fun, everybody's going to be in the gym. If you like your teammates, you're going to play better as a team. And you can do that with the Warriors. When they were having fun, they won championships. When they were hitting each other, things didn't go so well. So I think that it sounds corny, it sounds summer campish. Mitch Stevens said, I told him this, and he said, that sounds like you're running a summer camp. But I absolutely believe it. Fun plus friends equals success. All right. And it's a success in its own right, but I think it translates to success beyond that, because I think it's being success in those first two things correlates to success in terms of winning too.
So how do you practically apply fun plus lifelong friends as the coach, right? What does that actually look like? What's the blueprint for that relative to the era that we grew up in, or even the era that exists now, where it's like, we're here to work, let's do X, Y, and Z, whatever that looks like, right? What is the blueprint and the way in which that strategy gets rolled out?
Yeah, I think it's style of play, I think would probably be, we call ourselves the Runnin' Red Devils, and we play Runnin' Red Devils basketball. And we say Runnin' Red Devils basketball is, we play fast, we play tough, and the tough comes from my Chicago background. We play prepared, as we're going to put in the work, and we play with joy. We're going to have fun. But I think it's, a lot of people say they play fast and do not. But I believe when you play fast, there's more possessions, more guys play, more guys score. The more guys score, the more they buy in. And I really think our style of play really allows us to have fun and build a culture based on fun and team buy-in. We're playing, last 2 years, we've averaged over 70 points per game. We're playing probably 80 possession games. When you play 80 possession games, last couple years, we've played 12 guys every game. All right. When you play more guys, you're going to have more buy-in at practice. Guys, they're going to be happier. Their family's going to be happier. They're going to be spend more time in the gym. So I think the style of play, and it's a fun way to play. I can put guys out there, my last guys, I can put them out there. They can fly around in the press. And even if they only play 2 minutes in the first half and 2 minutes in the second half, they're a part of it and they contributed. And again, I just think for the culture, it does wonders.
Wise words. How do you do, we're getting in the weeds here, and then I'm going to get out of it because this is a rabbit hole. How do you do substitutions in regards to that so that you can ensure that they're all getting in, right? Because in the NBA, everything is scripted, right? And in high school, there's very few teams that do it. I did it like 1 or 2 games and I was like, I couldn't handle it anymore, but I'm curious how you do that.
It is hard to do. It is very hard to do. And ultimately, another thing, again, I don't want to go back, but the other thing, I think to be great, you got to be a little crazy. And I think to play fast, you got to be a little crazy. And I think you got to buy in, you got to believe in it. And I think we believe in what we do. We believe in all 12 of our guys, whoever many we're playing. And it's scary to take out your best guys and put in your second or third tier guys. But we believe in it and we do it, regardless of the circumstances. So I think it takes a lot of commitment. Yes, it is scripted. We still have, we have a rotation. We sub them more frequently than guys like, and especially your best players like. But you just got to believe it and you just got to do it. And I think as the season goes on, and the Warriors, you see with the Warriors, they always rest Steph at the start of the fourth quarter. And Steph probably wants to be out there. But it takes discipline to do that. And is what you got to believe is that if you rotate guys, you're giving them the ability to play 100% hard 100% of the time. And there's a trade-off. By not having your best players all the time out there, you may lose something, but you got to believe that what you're gaining is when they are out there, they're able to play 100% hard 100% of the time. And it's a trade-off that I believe in. We get our kids to believe in, and it's worked. That's not to say that at times there's a parent who says, hey, my son's one of the best players. Why are you subbing him out? But we believe in team, and we need guys to believe in teams. It's part on me, but it's really on the guys and our senior leadership. They've gone through it when they were the sophomore and they were getting in a little bit. They know now that when you're a senior, you got to sacrifice a little bit so the younger guys are going to get in a little bit. And that's part of the deal. They benefited when they were young and they sacrificed when they're older. And if we all sacrifice something, we're all going to benefit.
Yeah, no, it's something that I think has been proven over the years as an approach that delivers all the things that you just espoused. Yet it is, to your point, you got to be a little crazy and you got to be willing to push your chips in on that. And and not look back. And that's the sticking point for a lot of us in many different things that we do, right? But I think there is a template, there is a blueprint, and how do you do that to achieve your goals and what it is that you're espousing, right? Fun, joy, building friendships, all that stuff. And I think that's a great way to do it. Let me ask, before we started recording, we talked about sharing athletes. We talked about duals and three sport kids and how you navigate that. Number one, how do you embrace that, especially at a small school? How do you promote that? And then the second piece that I'm curious about, as a basketball guy that's coaching 100 games a year between high school and club, how are you finding inspiration and education outside of the basketball discipline, right? At football, at tennis, whatever, as your kids are out playing these other sports?
First of all, I'm a big believer in multi-sport athletes, and we are at a smaller school, so we really need to encourage that to be team players. But beyond that, I believe in that. And our school is the enrollment has been 420. We're going up over 500 because we're expanding the campus. And probably about 60% of my kids play two or more sports, and we have some who play three sports. So we encourage it. One thing is, I believe stress plus rest equals growth. You need to stress your body, then you need to rest your body. And playing multiple sports, the first thing it does is it gives your body a rest. There's so many overuse injuries, there's mental burnout, and playing that second sport gives your body and your mind a rest. And so I think it's very beneficial in that regard. It gives the kids a different group of friends. The other benefit is there's cross-train benefits. Really, in all sports, football guys are tough. I've had tennis guys. They're good with lateral movement. They're good with the mental skills because the pressure's on them because they're the only one on the court. We're very read and react oriented in what we do in basketball. Baseball players, every pitch, they got to read and react. Every time they hit the ball in the field, they got to read and react. Am I going to the plate? Am I going to first base? I think there's a lot of training benefits regardless of the sport. So we really believe in multi-sport athletes. Now, at the same time, what I do is I'm providing an opportunity to play basketball year round. And we don't require that. Probably I should eat some of my own cooking and take a year off and coach another sport. I've got a background in baseball too, and maybe I should coach a little baseball. I coached my son's CYO baseball team. I helped coach his CYO soccer team. So maybe I'm getting a little of that too. But yeah, no, I'm a believer in multi-sport athletes. I think it's healthy. You look at the stats about Olympic athletes, professional athletes. I think the stats show that most of them played two sports through high school. So if you're going to even compete at the highest level, having played two sports probably benefited those folks. And people shouldn't be scared of doing it.
What did you learn coaching baseball that you brought with you into basketball?
Again, I had touched on a little bit the read and react, the focus. I tell you, in baseball, in basketball, I really believe in positionless basketball, playing all the positions. And I was a strange baseball player where I played all the positions, though my primary position was catcher because my older brother was a star pitcher and he also insisted that I was his catcher. So that advanced me in the game probably earlier than I should have. But when you're catching, you're in every play. But I've also played outfield. I've also played third base. And you're out in the outfield far from the action. You got to be 100% focused because you don't know when the ball's coming to you. And I think in basketball, everybody wants the ball in your hands, but you only have the ball in your hands about a fifth of the time. So we need everybody, again, back to my comment, 100% effort, 100% of the time. We need guys to be 100% focused 100% of the time. And I think baseball is good in that regard, in addition to the read and react. And when baseball takes commitment too, basketball is a little more fun to play because there's more action. But I tell you, I love baseball. I love baseball, and I was 100% focused wherever I was positioned.
Yeah. No, over the last few years, at least here, the best teams we had were those that had our three sport guys on it. We had a couple that played four. That was just ultimately, they just showed up and competed. And what we lacked in certain skilled things, you made up for in competing and just knowing what that looks like in whatever forum you happen to be in. What, 20 years in, how has your approach changed during that time?
Yeah, it's a continual involvement. I think I've evolved, but I've probably become more committed to the style of play. Again, as I said, I really believe in the playing fast and the pressing, and for the reasons stated. But I think we've gotten better at it. You know that one of my saying, I think actually it was Picasso saying, so I don't want to steal it, but his comment was, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And so I stole Picasso's quote. But we're always learning. And I studied international basketball, then I studied Vance Wahlberg, but I continued to study guys like Jim Critchfield at Nova Southeastern and Bucky McMillan at Sanford. Once he took them to the tournament, I really went to school on them. So we're always learning, we're always evolving. The personnel always changes. So you always got to be flexible. So it's a little bit of a paradox. We're committed to what we're doing, yet at the same time, we're evolving as needed. I think as you spend more time in it, I think it gives you a little perspective. I think the hardest thing about coaching is the fear of losing. I think the losing is okay because then you learn from it and go to work, but it's the fear of losing that hurts. And I think the more you do it, the more you realize, hey, no matter what happens, we're going to survive and keep moving on. And our focus here is developing kids as people. And so I think the perspective helps with the coach's mental skills in that regard.
No doubt. Absolutely. 100% in agreement. Let me ask a follow up in regards to leadership, right? I don't know if there were ADs between the guy that hired you and Anthony, but now that he's been there for a couple of years, what have you been able to glean from all of those who brought you into the high school space and helped you make that transition from AAU? What are some of the things you've been able to take away? And what advice would you have for others in regards to being forever present and learning from those around you?
Yeah, I've been blessed with great leadership above me. Jim Ketchum was terrific, and Anthony now is terrific, and both are. I believe in servant leadership, and both those guys are servant leaderships. They're working for the coaches and their athletes, and that them modeling that really reinforces that I'm working for my players. And but both, and hugely supportive in terms of equipment, going to bat. There's always parents with questions, and both could not be more supportive and very appreciative of that. And also somebody you can talk to and celebrate with and commiserate with when you need to. But yeah, I'm very appreciative of the athletic director's support that I've received.
Glad to hear it. Anthony will probably be glad as well. Professional life, real estate. How does that discipline show up in your coaching and your work with kids?
Um, the real world, is not always forgiving. And again, it goes back to fundamentals. I worked in real estate and finance with some high level folks. I worked for a Forbes 400. I worked for Goldman Sachs. And what is that organizations that succeed have a common mission. They have the right values. They do things the right way. They reward success. Typically, when there's a partnership, all the entities I work for were partnerships. And when people are aligned in terms of being rewarded when things go well and suffering when things don't go well, they work better as a team. And so I think that translates directly into what I do as a coach, because my program is about team. And we win together, we lose together, and we're in the gym together. And so we really emphasize. The other thing is, I'm a believer, being a real estate guy, being a business guy, I believe in free markets. All right. I believe in individuals making decisions. What we do on the basketball court is we play fast. When you play fast, the coach he gives up a lot of control. All right. I found the less plays we run, the more points we score. And again, that sounds a little crazy, but that doesn't mean we're not doing anything. We're playing with pace. We're playing with space. We're all playing by read and react rules. It's a rule-based system. And so in our system, we're giving the guys a lot of freedom to make decisions. So what we're doing on the basketball court is a free market decision. If they make good decisions, we have success and they play more. If they make bad decisions, they come out and learn from those decisions. But at the end of the day, when the game starts, my work's been done. And we're giving the guys a lot of freedom. We're trusting them. I think philosophically, I believe players win games. And again, this goes back to where my whole perspective is from a player's perspective. I believe players win games. That means three things. One, we hopefully attract good players. Number two, we spend a lot of time developing players. And in our case, we spend a lot of time developing them on read and react actions. And then number three, when the game starts, we trust players. So again, I give them a lot of freedom, and I think that may come from my experience in entrepreneurial business.
Sure. No, all of that makes perfect sense and all fits together, right? Ironically enough, where you want to be mission aligned with what it is you're trying to do and the skills you're trying to teach and the way in which you operate outside of that incubator, right? And I think that's awesome that you're able to do that. Last question. More of a growth mindset deal. Just always curious what people are working on in regards to challenging their own beliefs and assumptions. So I always ask, what have you most recently changed your mind on? And it doesn't have to be basketball related. It might be, but right, I used to be dug in over here and now I'm over here and I've made an intentional shift and here's why.
One of my challenges is I'm also a father. And I have a son who's just a tremendous young man, but he's not a basketball player. He played up until last year. And I think at the end of the day, as much as a coach or as much as a father, you want to influence an outcome, there are times when you just got to let go. And that's hard to do. That's hard to do. And again, I think you always want to think you can influence or you can control, but I think you need to be comfortable just letting go sometimes. And I think that's been a recent realization as my son has decided he's not going to play basketball in high school and is going to focus his interests, which are wonderful interests. And my role is now just to support.
No, that's a great perspective. And it's funny. I've got a senior in college, I've got a sophomore in college, and I've got a freshman in high school. And it's funny because I came to this crossroads at one point with my eldest, where in the independent school world, right, you have an advisory program. So I have advisees. Part of the deal is like they come and they ask for advice and then they go off and do whatever they're going to do. And we're generally okay with it. But when like your kid doesn't follow the advice, you take it personally. And so I had to get right with like, why am I so mad when she doesn't follow the advice that I'm giving to her friend who also is choosing not to, but this one stings more, right? And you got to create the personal from that. And that's hard. I love that you're wrestling with that. I've been there and God bless you. We are here to walk alongside of them in partnership.
Yep. Amen.
Yes, sir. All right, Coach. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you and all you do. Thank you, Justin.